In the previous episode, Lin became the head director of the Twin Towers. After a while he stayed at the hotel with his colleague and the next day he ended his career as a physical education teacher. He came to the university to pick up his things and told her that he was quitting. Sugo asked him what he was going to do after quitting. Lin replied that she had nothing to worry about because he would be working as a courier. She asked him why he would do that. After all, he is very rich. Sugo said, so she will be able to place a personal order with him, but Lin asked her not to talk like that, as he would be a courier and not a call boy. She laughed and asked him to go with her to the HR department. After a while, Lin registered on the app and immediately got a new order. He arrived at Shangchengoji. Ryoko met him there. She is a music conservatory teacher. Lin brought her a lectern at 128 yuan. She thanked him for such a fast delivery. But at that moment Hao came out. He said in surprise, how could he come so fast? After all, he did not even have time to play the game. Lin told him that he should practice. After all, playing the piano is a grateful thing, but Hao grudgingly replied, if he thinks so, then can he practice himself? Hao laughed at him and said that if he could play the piano, he wouldn't be working as a courier, but Lin furiously asked how would he know that. Hao replied that Lin himself said it was a thankful job, then how would he learn, got even angrier and realized that Hao was a real freak. The mother apologized to him for her son's behavior. Lin said it was fine, and asked if he could try to play the piano. She allowed it, but warned him that her son's level was far above that of his peers. Lin said that although he was self-taught, he also played well for his age. Hao asked his mother not to stop him, as he wanted to see if some courier could beat. Lin gave him a condition if he was better than him, but in that case, he would obey his mother. Hao agreed, as he had nothing to fear. Lin hadn't played the piano, he got the sage's knowledge. After a little preparation he started playing. His mom and Hao couldn't believe it, because it's Wandering Fire, and it's the 9th most difficult in the world. Also this composition is every performer's headache. She told him that as a conservatory teacher, she would not have been able to play this composition so perfectly. But Lin said not to praise him. Hao said that Lin is probably his mother's student and he is deliberately pretending to be a courier to deceive him. Lin laughed and said it's not true and asked if he doesn't know how to lose. Hao couldn't believe that he lost to the courier. His mother thanked him and said something that her name was Ryoko and she worked at a top theater school. Plus she thought he would be a great candidate to work for them. But Lin said he didn't need a job yet. He was about to leave, but Ryoko wanted to add him on WeChat to contact him in case of anything. Lin couldn't refuse and gave her his ID. Wei congratulated him for completing the first order in his new career, and as a reward, he received a Moon Harbor beach. Lin was happy about this, since he could connect Jiazhao and Wangjiang Harbor. Some time later, he received a phone call from a Moon Harbor beach management official. He asked when would it be convenient for him to meet. Lin rejoiced and said what he had time for now, and he could meet with him now. After a while, he arrived at the department and was met by a blonde woman who said she was the one who contacted him. She gave him the contracts and documents so he could read them and see if there were any problems. Lin didn't understand why the Moon Harbor was privatized and auctioned off since it was public property. She said that actually the beach has no agreed maintenance costs, so she entrusted it to other people, and they have social status, so they beach at auction. After all, although he bought it, but the Moon Harbor is still owned by the state, he can use it for 70 years and then renew the lease. He asked did he really need to discuss further use of the beach with the actual manager of the Moon Harbor. She said yes, and now they're at Bin Hai 142. Lin called Bai and asked him what he knew about Moon Harbor Beach. Bai asked if he was thinking of buying the beach. After all, there are a lot of problems with this place and they owe them 200,000 yuan. Lin got angry and told him to take a promissory note and he would come over and meet them. They arrived at the right address and saw two guys sitting there just smoking. Lin said it looked very formal, but still this company. They recognized him and asked what their boss was doing here. Lin told them to get the manager immediately. They said they were sorry, but their brother was not here. But Lin asked who he was trying to fool here, since his car was parked here. He informed them that the owner of Moon Harbor Beach and Wanjiang Port was standing in front of them. He didn't come here just because of debt. They could not believe it and asked him to Lin to go with them to the office. But Lin threw the documents at them and exclaimed that he would not go anywhere with them, and told them to tell the boss to immediately get the hell out of the Moon Harbor. And also that he would wait for the debt, or else can forget about a quiet life. They immediately ran up to their brother named Dong. They told him that the man who bought the Moon Harbor had just arrived. He told them to get lost and pay back the debt to the port of Wanjiang. Dong was very angry and asked what did he have to do with the port of Wanjiang. Bai told them that Lin is the owner of this port. Dong said that Lin is pretty cool to have influence even in his territory. The aide said that Lin tried to make a show of himself, said a couple of phrases and left. Chang lit a cigarette and said that Dong had just been disrespected. Dong said that he would find him tomorrow and deal with him, and if Lin didn't realize it would destroy all his businesses. Chang said he admired his ruthlessness. At this time Lin came to the Bandao Hotel and asked the manager to give him all the accounts and financial documents. Manager Wang said he would prepare and give him all the reports. Lin asked how come the Bandao Hotel owed money. He asked how much was owed. Wang said the hotel owes about 3 million. Lin asked him why he didn't report it before, and told him to give him a named list of debtors. Wang replied that there was nothing he could do about it. He didn't know how to tell him about it as those people were very serious. A few minutes later Lin was looking at the list of debtors and was surprised as Han was there. Lin wanted to call him but Wang tried to stop him and said that last night Mr. Han brought some girls to the hotel and didn't pay, but he is probably still at the hotel. But Lin called him anyway and asked why the hell he owed the hotel 118,000 yuan. Han asked in surprise, what does he care about his debts? After all, the Bandao Hotel is not property. Lin asked, who told him that the Bandao Hotel doesn't belong to him, and if he pays back the money, he will let him live here for free. Han jumped off the bed and asked Lin where is he now, replied to go downstairs to manager Wang's office. A few minutes later they were told that a man named Dong had come to see them and wanted to meet Mr. Lin in person. Lin was surprised and told them to go to the office. Manager Wang saw that Dong had some kind of box in his hands. He radioed the security chief to gather all the security guards on the first floor. Dong put the box on the table and said that it was his little gift for him. He hoped he would like it, because they would do great things in the future. Lin asked who told him that they would work together in the future. Dong asked, why is he talking to him like that? After all, he had come to him personally, and besides, he would forgive his words, but if they did not agree, his business be over. Dong called himself a lost man and he had nothing to fear, but it would be very painful for him to fall. Lin was furious and hit him on the head with a glass and exclaimed, how dare he threaten him. His assistants jumped on him. They could not allow anyone to treat their boss like that. But Lin had no problem defending himself against them. Dong told him to stop and not to do anything stupid. Lin told him that he did not know how he would solve his affairs, but this time he would not succeed, because he not only owns the beach and the port, but also this hotel along with all the guards. Dong was horrified and couldn't believe that the Bandao Hotel was also his. He looked out the window and saw a huge number of guards. Lin said that Dong knows more about the underworld than he does, so if he puts a price on his head, Dong knows what will happen to. At that moment, Han came to them and asked Chang why he was still here. Chang called him master and asked what is he doing here. Dong ran up to Han and said that he and Mr. Lin were discussing some business problems, so he should help them. Han asked Lin, does he really share business with these dumbasses? Replied that Dong had just said he wanted to cooperate. Han asked, what idiot even came up with this idea? He looked at Chang and said that he is not that stupid and could not have done it, which means that this idea was Dong. Han told them to shut up as even his position does not allow him to do common business with. Dong was very scared and could not imagine who Lin. Han kicked him and told him not to look at Lin that way anymore. At that moment Lin asked them when they were going to pay back the debt they owed to the port of Wanjiang. Dong and the others ran out of the hotel and said they would bring back all the money they owed. Han asked Lin if he should follow them, but Lin replied that Dong and his company were just losers and not worth wasting your time on them. Han shyly asked if he helped him solve this problem. Does that mean he cannot pay the debt he owes to the hotel? Lin asked, how did he get so much nerve? Han said that when doing business, you have to be a little cheeky, otherwise you can lose all the businesses. A few minutes later, Qing called him and asked how her teacher was doing, but he told her not to call him teacher anymore because he had already quit the university. Qing said, he was fired for seducing female students, right? Lin asked, does she really think he is that kind of person? After all, he just wants to try everything in this life, and when he gains experience, he changes jobs, and now he is a courier who delivers goods. She said, in that case, she will order right now. Lin replied, couldn't refuse the order of such a beautiful girl. A few minutes later he came to her and told her that her package had arrived. Qing called him very fast, but Lin said that was the only thing he was fast at, if she knew what he meant. He asked her why she wanted meat and herbs. Qing said she sometimes wants to cook something herself. And asked if he wanted to test her cooking skills. Lin said that he would love to appreciate it, but he suddenly had a craving for beef steak. The sage mind had endowed him with cooking skills, so he wanted to test them again. 20 minutes later, he prepared an incredibly appetizing and delicious meal. Qing couldn't believe her eyes as the food was decorated better than their chef. Lin told her that she could start eating and he would get her some juice. He went to the refrigerator and at that moment he heard a scream. Lin was scared and asked what happened. But as it turned out she exclaimed because the food was just incredibly delicious. She said his food tasted better than any 5-star restaurant and asked where he learned to cook so good. Lin got shy and said he had an innate talent for cooking. Qing looked at him and said that for such talent he could ask anything as a reward. Suddenly he kissed her and said he wanted his reward right now. She told him that they were in the office and they were not allowed to kiss as someone might see it. After 30 minutes, Lin asked her why she called him when he was at the hotel. Qing said she had to go to the port of Wanjiang and wanted him to go with her. Lin agreed to go together and he would see how the project was going. Qing told him that yesterday she had talked to Guan from Yalo Zhizi's company. She said the cost of the project would be about 300 million yuan, but Qing said it would be possible to save 150 million yuan. But Lin asked why he should do that since he had no shortage of money. Qing said that the harbor project is too big and it's very serious money, and he could put it off and come back to it in a moment of need. Lin replied that he understood her fear, but he wouldn't have taken it on if he wasn't sure. She said she had talked more to the planner and if the nearby Moon Harbor beach could be included in the redevelopment plan, that would be just fine. Lin told her that he would then buy the Moon Harbor beach. Qing asked him if he was sure he could buy it. After all, the ownership of the beach is in the hands of ZF. He replied that he could do it. Suddenly she told him that wearing a bikini in a private pool is boring, it's better to sunbathe on the beach, and if someone gave her a chance, she would take it, but she didn't want to overestimate. A few minutes later, a construction worker came running to them and said it's good that they came. He was just about to contact them. He informed them that Dong had paid back the debt he owed and now the Moon Harbor beach was all theirs. Hearing this, Qing couldn't believe it. Lin told her that the beach was all his now and reminded her that she had wanted to sunbathe on the beach a few minutes ago. She hugged him and asked him how he was doing it so cleverly. Ching told him that he had a whole port and she wanted him to take her to the sea. Lin agreed, but they needed equipment to teach her how to dive in the sea. She convinced him that he wanted to set up a charitable foundation and she contacted 2 people and she would handle the formalities, and if he didn't have any special address requirements, she would find him a building. Lin said he would leave the formalities to her, but the foundation would be located in Linyun. When she heard the name of the company, she couldn't believe that the company also belonged to him. Lin said yes, and Linyun really belongs to him. He told her that he still needed to take orders for courier work. He asked her to be careful on the roads. After Ching left, he received a new order. He needed to buy 2 swimming laps for the girls. They wrote that they cost 200 yuan and the brand doesn't matter. Lin went to the store and bought 2 swimming laps, the best quality, for 209 yuan. He said he needed a receipt to show the buyer. The salesman called him handsome and asked why he worked as a courier. He said he knew a lot of rich women and could introduce him to them. Lin laughed and said he didn't need it. A few minutes later, Lin arrived at the beach and called the customer and said he had brought his order and it was standing by the beach. Gu said he didn't have time right now, so he should to go to the big red umbrella. After a few minutes, Fei saw him and was very surprised because Lin was handsome. She ran to Gu and said that the courier who bought them the swimming laps was cute and handsome. When she saw him, she didn't understand why such a handsome man was working as a courier. Bin asked indignantly, "What do you mean why? After all, it is obvious that his brains don't work, as he couldn't find them for a long time even though they were 5 meters away from each other." Fei said that she was just looking for an employee with good looks and figure. Lin came up to them and said that the 2 laps cost him 418 yuan, but he could give it to them after they paid the bill. Fei asked him if he had thought about changing jobs, as she had her own clothing store and was looking for a staff. Lin said he was not interested and asked them who would pay the bill. But at that moment, Bin exclaimed that he would not pay the bill because he asked to buy the circle for 200 yuan and he bought it for 209 yuan. Lin asked, "Does he really think he needs his pennies?" Bin asked indignantly, "Does he really think he is richer than him?" But Fei tried to stop him and said that Bin might not be able to pay, so she is willing to close the account. But Bin said that he invited her to the beach, so he will pay for everything. He gave him the money, but Lin said that 2 laps cost 418 yuan, and he only gave 400. Bin asked what was the problem, because he clearly said he would pay 200 yuan, not 209 y. Gu admired him and said that the courier needs to train his memory. Lin gave the money to Fei and said that apparently her friends are very poor, so he is giving them these 2 laps. He was about to leave, but at that moment Bin exclaimed to him that he would not let him go unpunished for calling him poor, because he has his own company with a total profit of about 2 million yuan a year. Lin asked him, then why is he so nervous about 18 yuan? Bin replied, since he has the money, can he take the risk of taking another order? Lin smiled and said that it wouldn't be a problem. Fei tried to change his mind, as he is best not to argue with and impossible to beat. A friend told her to mind her own business and asked whose side she was on anyway. At this point, Bin placed an order and Lin asked him if he really wanted him to buy him a Ferrari 812. Reminded him that he was a courier and after he bought this car, he would immediately pay. Lin said that in a few hours he would come here to drive the Ferrari 812. But Bin laughed at him and said that if he ran away, he would file a complaint against. Bin approached Fei and offered to drink the 1664 wine, but Fei turned him down. Gu said that they came here to have fun, then why is she sitting with a disgruntled face? Told them that they did wrong to the courier. Bin asked her, is she seriously still thinking about that courier? Few minutes later, Lin came back to them and he had a leather suitcase in his hands. Bin asked how he had the nerve to come back, and isn't he not enough trouble, then, he will call his grandfather. Fei told him to shut up, because threatening the courier is unnecessary. Gu asked her, doesn't she know who Bin is and what kind of person he is, so she should stay out of? But Fei said she couldn't just watch Bin bully. But at that moment Lin opened the briefcase and the documents were emptied out, and a few seconds later a truck arrived with a Ferrari 812 inside. Lin angrily asked him, he's rich, right? So he can afford to buy this car? But Bin said he didn't have that much money to pay the bill. Lin told him if he was willing to accept his defeat, he should get on his knees. But Bin got angry and said, who is he to talk to him like that, and does he know a man named Dong? Lin laughed and said he didn't know such a person. Bin called him and said he was willing to pay him 10,000 yuan to take some men with him to solve the problem. Bin told him to stay and his friends would arrive in a few minutes. Fei told him to run away from here as he would definitely not be able to handle Dong and his friends. A few minutes later, Dong came in and Bin told him that Lin had tried to cheat him and needed to be taught a lesson. Lin turned to them and asked who was there to help him. But as soon as Dong and Chang saw him they stood in a stupor, whereupon they bowed to him and called him master. Lin said that recently he had let them leave in peace, but not even a day had passed and they got him in trouble again. Dong and Chang bowed again and apologized to him, but Bin stood in a stupor and did not understand what the hell was going on. Dong punched him in the stomach and angrily asked how dare he make trouble for Mr. Lin, after all, the whole beach and the port of Wanjiang belonged to him. Fei and Gu could not believe it. Dong asked Lin whether Bin should be punished, and if so, how best to punish him, but Lin replied that it would be enough if Bin knelt down and apologized. Bin was very scared, he had no other option and knelt down and started to beg Lin's forgiveness in tears. Lin said that this time he would forgive him, but if they didn't have any money, they could go to Bai and ask them for a job. Dong and Chang were grateful and thanked. Fei told him that she didn't want to stay here and asked Lin if he could take her home. Lin agreed and asked, doesn't she need to change her clothes? Said it was very hot outside so she would be comfortable in her swimsuit. Suddenly Gu also asked him to take her home since she didn't come here in her own car. But Lin told her that there were only 2 seats on his motorcycle, so she could take the truck. At this moment, Wei congratulated him for getting 3 orders and receiving 3 5-star reviews. Thanks to this, his career is 40% complete and he received a reward of 1 billion yuan. Lin kissed her and thanked her for it. He opened his phone to see his account. Fei saw his balance and was shocked by the amount of his money. Fei said that she accidentally saw his message and his balance is more than 15 million yuan and her clothing store is not worth that kind of money. But Lin told her that she is wrong because his account is now 15 billion yuan and hers is million. They arrived at the clothing store and Lin asked her, is it really her store? Fei said yes, because she graduated from Dunhua University, majoring in fashion design. She took out some wine and asked if he would like to have a drink with her. Lin replied that he still had things to do, so he would take her business card. Fei asked him why he needed her business card, because he could add her to WeChat. Lin said he needed her contact for another matter, because his company might need to order uniforms, and if anything, he could contact her to place an order. She was happy and said she would be happy to work with him. After a while received an unexpected phone call from Zhang, who was Lin's roommate from the university he attended and was currently working as a salesman in a technology company. Zhang said that he would soon come to Zhonghai for a few days and he missed him and would like to meet him. But Lin told that he didn't miss him at all. Zhang asked if he had heard of Cisco. They had solved the problem of programming the control unit, which would improve chip development, and he wanted to arrange cooperation with them. But Lin suggested that he could talk about it when he came to town. Lin couldn't believe that Cisco had bypassed him, because just a few days ago, he had written the source code at his Chip Technology Institute. He decided to go there to see how his staff worked. Luing told him that the control box program had been written and the third test had been started, but there was a problem in the frequency hopping range. Lin came into the office and said that he had heard that Cisco had developed the final program for the control box. Sun and Luing stood stunned and could not believe it. Lin said that as far as he knew, Cisco had made rapid progress thanks to a techno-professional. That person must be Lucci, whom he fired. Sun was surprised, because he knew that Lucci was a professional, but he didn't know that he was a high-level professional. Luing said that he had nothing to worry about, because as far as Lucci was concerned, she could guarantee that there must be a lot of mistakes in his work results and his program is not as perfect as theirs. But Lin got angry and told her that she has no brains, because the market and people won't believe them because they haven't applied for a patent. Luing asked him if they should register a patent now before Cisco does it first. Lin replied that Cisco should have registered a long time ago, and if they also register, they will become a laughing stock for the whole industry. Sun apologized to him for this situation and asked him to fire only him. Lin said there was no point in firing him, and it would be better if he thought of how to fix this situation. Sun said it was now their duty because they had loosened their grip and others had taken advantage of it. Lin said it was time for them to stop talking and start working immediately. After all, Cisco had stolen their technology, but it was only the first version. And now they needed to surpass them. Sun and Luing exclaimed that they would do everything they could to help him. Lin used the mind of a sage and after 12 hours of hard and non-stop work he completed the project. Sun asked if he had done everything. Lin said that the processes are complete, but the technology from the multiplier is not good enough, so they need to buy 2 Dutch multipliers. Sun said that right now he will order them. Lin went to Luing and said that she needs to organize the development of a new mobile operating system as soon as possible, and this operating system should be no worse than ISO. Lin hugged them and exclaimed happily that right now they are making history in chip development, and they are the ones who will open a new page of the future. Lin went outside to have a servant bring him a sports car, and at that moment he received a new order. He needed to buy and deliver an original Yali brand charger. An hour later he arrived at the address. He delivered the original charger from Yali store to Mr. Zhou, and the order cost 613 yuan. Zhou asked him why is it so expensive. After all, the store has 50% discount today. Lin said the promotion ended yesterday and he himself did not mention the discount. Zhou did not believe him and said he was cheating him to make money. Lin showed him the receipt and said he had no reason to lie to him. Zhou saw the receipt and stood in a stupor. He said if he knew it would cost so much he would have bought a copy. But at that moment his wife came out and told him not to worry so much about a few hundred yuan, and he shouldn't be so hard on people. Zhou listened to her and said he was going on the night shift today, and she and the baby should go to bed early. Lin was about to leave, but at that moment Zhou told to take 2 bags of garbage with. Lin turned around and said he didn't have to do that. Zhou said if he wanted to get 5 stars, he should throw out the garbage or else he would complain. Lin told him to file a complaint and give him the money for the order. But Lin was too angry and decided to go outside where he saw another courier throwing out garbage and then he tried to lift the table by himself. Lin saw that he couldn't do and decided to help him. The courier thanked him and said he was very tired because he was forced to throw out garbage even though he was working as a courier and delivering food to people. Lin asked why he agreed to do a job he shouldn't do. Courier said that he had no other choice because if he got a bad grade, he wouldn't earn anything. Lin told him that he was also working. At that moment, Zhao went outside with the garbage and indignantly asked why the hell he still hadn't left. Zhao said he might not think about 5 stars and he will complain about Lin not doing his job. Lin replied that it doesn't matter to him and he can safely complain about him and called him an idiot. Zhao threw the garbage in a rage and asked who did he just call an idiot, and he doesn't know who he messed with since he works at Zhonghai Chemical and Industrial Company and holds the position of sales manager. Zhao wanted to take a picture of the car Lin drove to file a complaint against him. Lin laughed at him and said if he thinks the Audi A6 is trash, he can take a picture of it. Zhao stood in a stupor and didn't understand if he is so rich, why is he working as a courier? Lin replied that he was just gaining life experience, and asked Zhao if he really worked at Zhonghai. Zhao was scared of him because he thought Lin was a rich and powerful man. Lin told him that with this kind of attitude towards people, he would soon be fired from his job and he should get ready to work as a courier. Zhao knelt down and started picking up the garbage he had just thrown away and asked him for Lin to forgive him. Suddenly he received a new order, he needed to buy emergency contraception medicine. Lin hesitated as he had a very bad feeling. After 30 minutes, Lin arrived at Zhang Taiching's apartment building. A blonde-haired girl opened the door for him and Lin asked in surprise, was it really her? It was Wang. Recently when Lin bought the Twin Towers, he had fired her and her boyfriend. She asked him in surprise, is he really working as a courier now? Lin asked her, what's the problem? He handed her her order and told her to pay him 68 yuan. Wang laughed at him and asked, did he go broke and now work as a courier? He said it's none of her business and all she has to do is pay for her order. Wang laughed at him even harder and said, is he so eager to get money because he became poor? And is he sure he can handle the job? At that moment, she threw the medicine on the floor and said that she no longer needed the medicine and told him to return them to the pharmacy. He didn't care, picked up the medicine and was about to leave. But at that moment, she decided to take a picture of him. Lin indignantly asked why she was taking a picture of him. She said she wanted to share the news with her classmates so that everyone would know what he had become. At that moment, her boyfriend came out of the bathtub and asked if she had taken the pills he had ordered for her. But as soon as he saw Lin, he stood in a stupor and asked what was he doing here. Wang said that he was her classmate who started his own business, went bankrupt and became a courier. But at that moment, he slapped her and exclaimed, how dare she talk to Mr. Lin like that? Wang did not understand why he hit her, after all Lin had become bankrupt and he was no match for him. He told her that Mr. Lin was here to gain experience in different areas of life. He bowed to him, and apologized for her behavior. Lin gave him the medicine he ordered and asked to remember to give him 5 stars. He got into the car and was surprised that his career as a courier was almost over and would probably end after one more assignment. Qing called him and asked if they were going to eat together at her house today. Lin said he hadn't forgotten about it and he would pick her up now. She suggested that he meet her at Times Square Mall as she still needed to buy groceries. Lin arrived at the appointed place 10 minutes later. Qing said she had heard that a new big supermarket had opened in the mall. They walked around the supermarket together and Lin asked her, aren't they here to buy groceries? Qing said yes. Lin asked, then why is she buying so many cakes and desserts? She said, doesn't he know that sweets give girls a good mood? He asked her, doesn't he give her a good mood? She felt very embarrassed and shyly called him a pervert. After a few minutes, the basket was full of fresh and delicious foods and Lin suggested she go home. But she said she wanted to buy more beef because the beef steak he cooked last time was very tasty, so she wanted to try it again. Suddenly, an unfamiliar man came up to her and said hello. Qing didn't recognize and asked who. He said his name was Wen and he was a talent seeker from Wuyuan Media. He asked her if she was interested in entering the entertainment industry. After all, she is bound to become popular because of her looks. Lin got angry and said that Qing is not interested and he should go to the vendor who sells fish. Wen turned around and the vendor asked him if he wanted to buy her fish. Wen replied to him that he was not talking to him, but to this beautiful girl. He promised her that if she entered the entertainment industry, it would be a breakthrough, because he is the one who made Lu Fanfei a star and now his annual income is more than 100 million yuan. Qing said to Lin that an income of 100 million yuan sounds very good. Wen told him that his girlfriend was interested and if he loved her, he should let her go. Lin agreed and said he would let her go after 15 years. Wen stood in a stupor and did not understand why exactly after 15 years. Lin showed him his bank account and said that with his billions, he would be able to support her for at least another 15 years. Wen was shocked and could not count the number of zeros in his bank account. Wen bowed before him and apologized for his behavior. Qing jokingly asked Lin if she could get her 100 million as an advance payment. He said she could certainly get it, but he would check it tonight. An hour later they arrived at her house. Lin asked her if she was sure her parents wouldn't be home tonight. Qing said he had nothing to worry about. Lin said he wasn't afraid of her parents, but he had already run into them a few times and it embarrassed him. Qing asked why his face was already red even though she had not yet paid him back about the situation at the supermarket. She grabbed his hands and offered to pay him back. After half an hour, she told that the charitable foundation had been finalized and the approximate contribution was 10 million yuan. She said she would arrange for him to meet the people in charge of the foundation and could he come to her office tomorrow at 12 noon. Lin was very grateful to her and said it was his turn to pay off his debt. The next day he brought her to work and she asked him not to forget about today's meeting. A few minutes later, Lin received a new order that said he didn't need to buy anything and he just had to come to the address. A while later Lin arrived at the address and saw a big crowd of people. He didn't understand what was going on and thought he was just called to help get the car out. While the owner of the car was streaming and talking about that today his car fell into a ditch and he called many couriers to help him get the car out. And he did it because he is a rich man. Lin called him an idiot as a rich man should not behave like that. He told him to come to him immediately, only waiting for him. He told everyone if they pull out the car, they will all get 5 stars. But Lin told him that he should find 6 more people as there are not enough of them all to pull out the car. But the blogger replied, how can 6 people not be enough? After all, couriers are engaged in physical work, and how can they not be able to lift some car? Lin was very angry with him and said he wouldn't do it because he had more important things to do. The blogger told his viewers that Lin with this attitude to work, in 10 years, he will still be a pathetic courier. But after a few minutes, Lin came to them with his car. The blogger saw him and couldn't believe his eyes. Lin asked him why he was so surprised, with the kind of thinking he had, he would never buy such a car. The blogger asked him not to talk like that, because that was the reason why everyone started to unsubscribe from him. Lin arrived at Qing's office and went into her office. He asked her why there was no one here. After all, the time was almost 12 noon. Suddenly she asked him to turn around. He went into the kitchen and saw all the ingredients he needed to cook a steak. Lin asked, did he really have to cook her a steak again? After all, just yesterday he had already cooked. But she hugged his arm and said that once she learned how to cook, she would cook him a delicious meal every day. After a while, Lin cooked her lunch, but at that moment someone knocked on her office. A girl named Yuan and a guy named San came to see them. Lin asked why did they come so early since they had agreed to meet at 2 o'clock. Yuan said they couldn't be late to meet the new boss. Suddenly she said she had something to learn from her since Qing had found such a handsome chef. Qing asked if Lin really looked like a Che. Yuan thought about it and said she could be wrong, this handsome guy could be a secretary. But Qing said Lin is really hers, but at that moment Yuan interrupted her and said she already realized who he was and she didn't have to explain. Yuan introduced San to them. She said she met him when she went to the United States as an exchange student and San is a professional. Ching was very happy to meet him and suggested that they have lunch together. After they ate, Yuan said that the handsome man cooks incredibly well. San said that he didn't expect that a person who knows about the domestic economic situation in microchips could cook so good. Yuan looked at the time and said it was almost 3 o'clock, but the new boss was late for some reason. Ching said their new boss had already arrived. She said Lin was the founder of Lin Yuan Foundation. Yuan was scared and said she didn't want to call him a cook or a secretary because she really didn't realize that he was their boss. Lin replied that he was happy about it, because by doing so he was checking if they were professionals and good people. He told them if they needed anything, they could feel free to ask him. Yuan asked him if his future business would be centered on foundations and what his business plan was. Lin replied that foundations are not his business goal, and would they believe him if he said he wanted to dominate the business map of the world? Yuan and San stood in a stupor and didn't know what. Ching told him that every ambitious person deserves respect. San said he had many questions, but his answer clarified everything. Yuan called him a handsome man with great ambition, so he will definitely succeed. Lin told them that each of them will have an annual salary of 5 million, and they will also receive bonuses, and when the company enters the market, he is willing to renegotiate these terms. Yuan called him a generous man and she would be happy to work with him. San said he would be uncomfortable to receive such a high salary. Lin said that money was not important to him because he was interested in talent and they were professionals who agreed to follow him to conquer the world. After a while, he invited them to look at the new company so they could start working. They came to the twin towers that he owned. Yuan asked him if he had rented an office in the twin towers. He said there was no need to rent as the towers belonged to him. Yuan told him that she no longer wanted to be the CFO, but wanted to be his personal secretary, but even though she didn't have long legs like female students, she would wear a black, short skirt. No. Ching asked her if wealth was worth the sacrifice. Yuan hugged her and apologized for giving her a reason to be jealous. Lin said he relies on all of them and they have 500 million yuan to make a strategic plan, and it's time for him to leave as he has other things. Yuan jokingly asked him, what else is he doing? Is he really cooking food for the other female director? Lin hugged Ching and said that he has another job and he works as a courier. They walked into the building and Lin asked Ching if she wanted to move her company to the Twin Towers. She said it was up to him and did he have the means to get her. Lin pinched her and said he would probably have to buy her, along with her company. She asked him to stop as Yuan and San had not left yet. Ching asked him if he had a general direction for future business development and planning. For example, real estate or service industry. Lin said no, as he believes in big data. She asked if his development strategy is based on big and cloud computing. He said that he is thinking right, however, what he wants to do is very not easy. Ching said that she has a suggestion, because he can enter the market directly as an investor and set up an investment company. Lin hugged her tightly and said that she is very smart. Ching said that Yuan is his employee, and he needs to take his benefits. He said that she has nothing to worry about, because such a resource, he will make the most of. Lin hugged her waist and asked her if she wants to change her job. After all, he has no secretary. Ching said that he dreamed too much, and asked him to take her back to work. After a while, Lin arrived at Zhonghai Airport. He got out of the Bentley that Zhang bought him. He was greatly surprised, because this car was really good. He looked at his phone and was happy that he had already collected 10 reviews with 5 stars. Suddenly Wei appeared and congratulated him for completing the main mission, and his career was 60% complete, and as a reward he received a lucky card, with a limit of 5 minutes. Lin asked in surprise, "What is this lucky card?" Wei winked at him and told him that in extremely extreme cases, this card would bring him luck. A few minutes later, his former classmate Zhang came out of the airport and next to him was a girl named Jiao. When he saw Lin, he pounced and hugged his old friend tightly. Zhang said that they hadn't seen each other since graduation and he couldn't resist and wanted to kiss him. But Lin tried to push him away and said that his girlfriend would question his orientation. Zhang introduced his girlfriend to him. He said her name was Jiao and she was from Zhonghe and she had come with him to meet his family. Lin was happy to meet and wanted to take them out for lunch. Jiao grudgingly said they had agreed not to eat at street stalls because they were unsanitary. Zhang said they often ate at such places while they were at university. Jiao said she heard that Zhonghai had opened a new cafeteria and suggested they go there. But Zhang said they wouldn't go to such an expensive place. Jiao turned to Lin. She said that if they knew each other, he could take them to a nice place. Zhang told her that Lin works in a real estate company and he must earn good money there. Lin told her that he no longer works there and now he works as a courier, but that doesn't mean he can't take them to the cafeteria. Hearing this, Zhang stood in a stupor and didn't understand how he became a courier since he was one of the best in the university. He offered him to go to Yanjing with him and he would help him find a good job. Jiao told him to shut up since he didn't have the extra money for Lin to live with them and if Lin did go she would break up with him. Lin asked them to stop arguing and he would stay in Zhonghai and not go to Yanjing with them. After 5 minutes they went down to the parking lot and waited for her brother for a long time. After a while he came over and Jiao was very happy to see her brother. He said just seen a brand new Bentley, took some pictures and sent them to his friends, and that's why he was a little late. The brother went up to Zhang and asked if he was her boyfriend, and if so, their mom had him over to their house for dinner. He asked Zhang if he had bought a car in Yanjing. Replied that he couldn't buy a car because Jiao couldn't get a job and he had to provide for her. Kim said that he worked for 2 years and was able to buy a better equipped Magotan, so why was he able to buy a car and Zhang couldn't? Lin interrupted him and said it was just a car and he would give him his own car. He opened his Bentley and everyone stood stunned and couldn't believe it. Zhang asked if it was his car. Jiao asked him, how can this Bentley belong to his friend from university? After all he is just an ordinary courier, where did he get a Bentley from? Zhang said understand it. Jiao said they didn't want him to go home and they would like to have lunch together to get to know each other. Lin asked her, because 10 minutes ago she said she didn't like street food. Kim said he could treat everyone to get to know each other and become friends. Jiao pulled Zhang and said they would go together. Lin treated them with disdain and told them to get in the car. Jiao said she couldn't believe he was driving a Bentley. Kim said it was the most luxurious car in the world and most people can't afford such a car. He asked him to add him on WeChat, and asked him if Lin could lend him the car for a few days since his friend who is getting married and only close people will be sitting in the car. Lin grudgingly asked what other close people. Kim saw his reaction and was very scared of him. Suddenly Jiao said that Kim can take this car since Lin said he will give this car to Zhang. But Zhang replied that he can't accept such an expensive gift. Jiao said that if he didn't accept the car, she would break up with him. A few minutes later they arrived at Zhonghai Delicatessen Street. Lin was that they arrived there. He asked Zhang if he remembered this place when they were in university. Said he would never forget this place. They sat down at the table and Zhang suggested to his girlfriend to choose a dish, but Jiao said she doesn't eat fatty food. After 10 minutes, their food was brought to them. Zhang thanked him for such hospitality and said that he had so much to tell. Zhang offered to stay at his house tonight to talk about everything and reminisce about their years at university. Zhang had to refuse as he was on a business trip and the company would reimburse the accommodation. Jiao told him that he shouldn't refuse such an offer and he should go to Lin's place today and she and her brother would go to her home. Zhang said that he couldn't go to his place anyway as Lin had a girlfriend and he would interfere with them. Lin laughed and said that he had long since broken up with Lu Sisi and they were now living separately, so he could come to his house and he would order more alcohol. A few minutes later, an employee from the sober driver company came to the house and asked them if they had ordered their services. Lin replied that he had called him and they needed to go to Jaya's house. Brother and Jiao couldn't believe it, because Jaya's house is a high-end residential area. Lin and Zhang were happily talking and remembering all the incidents from university. At this time, brother approached Jiao and quietly told her that she should find a way to get to Jaya's house no matter what. She asked him to relax as she already had a plan. A few minutes later, everyone got into his car, and an employee from sober driver was driving. He had no room left and indignantly asked Jiao, "Wasn't she going to go home today?" Jiao said that Zhang was too drunk and she couldn't let him go alone as she was very worried. Lin was angry but he let them go to his house and he called a cab for himself. Half an hour later they arrived at his place and Jiao was shocked when she saw these luxurious apartments. Zhang said that these houses are very expensive but Lin said that they are not very expensive and cost more than $1 billion. At that moment the manager came over to them and said that the roast meat that Mr. Lin ordered had already been delivered. Lin gave Zhang a friendly hug and said that he was apparently sober and they could start again. Zhang replied that he couldn't refuse him. Lin went into the house to bring alcohol. Jiao asked Zhang if his friend from university was hiding that he was rich. Zhang replied that he himself only found out today that Lin was so rich. After all, he was the most ordinary student at the university. Jiao told him that he should take advantage of it. After all, Lin has a lot of money and he is obliged to take the car as a gift. But Zhang pushed her and exclaimed that Lin is not his father so he can accept such an expensive gift, and Lin is not obliged to take care of him. Jiao called him a wimp and said that in that case she would take the initiative. After a while they went to his house and Jiao asked Zhang to wait for her while she took a bath. At this time Lin was standing at his bar and choosing alcohol. But at that moment Jiao came up to him and said that she wanted to talk to him. She looked at him with sweet eyes and asked him, "He doesn't have a girlfriend now, does he?" Lin realized that Jiao was not asking this with good intentions. He took out his phone and showed her Qing's picture and said that she was the director of a company worth over $1 billion and did she really think she could offer him something? She started pulling off her clothes and said, "He doesn't have a mistress, does he?" After all, she liked him at first sight and immediately wanted to be with him. Jiao took off her dress and Lin wondered what she wanted. Told her that he didn't see anything special in her and her figure, so there was no reason for her to do it. She didn't expect him to say that and didn't know what. Lin said that she wasn't worthy of his friend and told her to get out of his house. She got angry with him and said that he would regret what he had just done. But Lin said he didn't care about it. Suddenly she screamed. At that moment, Zhang ran into the room and asked in surprise, "What happened?" Jiao hugged him and said that she went into the bathroom and after she undressed, Lin came in and started Zhang couldn't believe it and said that he knew him well and there was no way Lin would do such a. Jiao got angry at him and said why is he protecting Lin, after all, she is his girlfriend. She exclaimed that Lin dare not do such a thing to her unless he has an extra $1 billion. Lin realized that she is a mercantile girl who would do anything for money. He asked her what makes her think that anyone would give her anything. She told him to shut up, because if she posted the video on Weibo, his reputation would be badly damaged. Lin said he didn't even touch her with his finger, and does she really think there are no CCTV cameras in such a big house? Jiao told her boyfriend to stop being silent and stand up for her. But at that moment, he pushed her hand away from him. Jiao asked, "What does that mean? Does he not love her anymore?" Zhang told her, how dare she talk to him like that after such a shameless act. Lin told her to get out of his house again while he was still in a good mood. She had no other choice and ran out of the house. Lin went to his friend and apologized to him and asked how he felt. Zhang said that he was the one who needed to apologize for his girlfriend, because thanks to him, he had learned his girlfriend's true nature. Lin was glad that Zhang had realized this, and now they had even more reasons to talk. They sat down at the table and Zhang said if he had any questions for him, he could feel free to ask. Lin asked him how much information he knew about Cisco. Zhang said that Cisco recently made a huge breakthrough in the software chip device, and the boss told him that he should win this project. Lin asked him who they are negotiating with. Zhang said that Yang Hongyu is the manager, and Deputy Yong Jiming is in charge of sales, but Zhang did not understand why Lin was asking this. And is he really interested in producing chips? Lin said he was just asking. He handed him the car keys and told him to take his car because it is inconvenient to get around in Zhonghai without a car. But Zhang refused again because this car is too expensive, but Lin insisted that he take the. Zhang said that he understood his help, but he wanted to earn the car by hard work himself, and he would still have a chance to help him in this. Lin said, definitely help him with everything. The next morning he saw that Zhang had made him breakfast. He left him a note saying that he had urgent things to do and that's why he had left so early. A few minutes later he received a new order saying that Lin should write the. Lin didn't understand why the hell he had received such an order because this work is not for a courier. He called the customer and introduced himself as a courier, and asked if he was not mistaken order, because if something goes wrong, he will appear at his graduation. The customer said that Lin misunderstood him, and he only need to rewrite the work on the computer. He said that he was in a hurry, and asked him to come to the address as soon as possible. After a while, Lin arrived at Zhonghai Engineering Institute. There was a young guy standing outside the institute with a bouquet of flowers. His name is Ning. He approached a girl named Xiao. He told her that graduation was coming up and he hoped she would be his girlfriend. She saw the ring and was incredibly happy. But at that moment, Lin passed by them and he asked Xiao how he could get to the main academic building. Xiao shyly replied that he should project through the main gate and drive up to the tallest building. Lin thanked her for her help and left. Ning told her that he was always sincere with her and asked her to be his girlfriend. Suddenly she looked at him with disdain and said that she wouldn't be his girlfriend. Ning didn't understand why she refused, because just a few seconds ago she wanted to agree. Xiao said wanted to sit in that luxury car because his car was not good enough. At the same time, a girl named Nora was sitting at the computer. She was very tired because she had been typing her thesis into the computer for a long time. Jean said they had no other choice because they only had enough money for the paper version of. And they had to wait a little longer because the courier would be here soon. After a few minutes, Lin came into their office and asked who was Ms. Jean. Jean immediately asked him to sit down at the computer and start working. She gave him a few sheets of thesis paper and told him that he only had to work for 4 hours and he would pay for the overtime. Lin asked her why there were so many mistakes in the paper, because if they handed in such a paper, they would not be able to graduate from the institute. She said that couldn't be, because this paper was sold to her by a classmate who had very good grades. Lin started pointing out all the critical and unacceptable mistakes. When she saw the mistakes, she couldn't believe it and didn't understand what she should do. He began to suggest options to correct the mistakes, to replace them. But John and Nora did not understand what he was talking about, as they were lagging behind the group. Nora wondered, it was the first time she had seen a courier who knew the laws of thermodynamics. John asked him to repeat the same thing, but slower. Lin said that even if he repeated everything, unlikely she would understand. After 2 hours, he redid all her work and said she could take it to the teacher and they would have no problem. But at that moment, Ning came into the room and said it was nonsense. John told him he didn't have to shout and asked why he was here now. After all, he was supposed to confess his love. Ning told her that what Lin had written was nonsense, and if she took the paper to the teacher, but she would only embarrass. Nora supported him, because Lin was just a courier and could not be trusted. Lin smirked and offered to show the paper to the supervisor. After all, the time to defend the diploma has not yet come and they will not lose anything. John agreed with him and ran to the teacher's office. Lin decided to go with her. She told the teacher that she had finished her thesis and wanted to check it. Xingfeng asked her where she was so late, and did she really want to get her diploma? Jean apologized to him as she wanted to make her thesis perfect, and that's why she worked so long on her work. After reading her work, he couldn't believe it and asked in surprise, did she really write all this? Jean was frightened and said yes. The teacher said that it can't be, because her knowledge level doesn't match the level of this. Jean was even more frightened and asked, what does all this mean? At that moment, Ning told the teacher that this paper was written by a person named Lin. Ning thought that there were many critical errors in this thesis, and that was why the teacher was very displeased and angry. The teacher asked Lin what group he was from and did he really write this paper. Interrupted him again and said that Lin was not a student of their institute and he was just a boy who had cheated John to earn money. Jean started to apologize and bow to the teacher and said that she had realized her mistake and it would not happen. But at that moment the teacher exclaimed that there was not a single mistake in this paper and this thesis was perfect.